They are free to the public. They are, when we say lunch and learn doesn't mean we offer lunch. So we've had some people get upset because we didn't have lunch for them. So if you want to bring lunch, go and have it right and watch. That's perfectly fine. Our next lunch and learn is April the 1st. We're trying to back it up just a bit. So it's the first Saturday next month because, you know, it's April Fool's Day and we just want to keep it mixed up there a bit. It's going to be presented by Anita Phillips, who's one of our master gardeners. Her area of interest is Native American gardening. And so she's going to be talking about herbs and plants and ways to utilize those. And she'll be bringing some plants here. So that sounds like an interesting one. Lunch and Learn is one of many projects that we do. We are an educational and resource branch of the UT Extension Service. So if you're interested in becoming a master gardener, please note so on the sign-up sheet. How many have already signed up? Yes, most of you. If you haven't, we'll pass the sign-up sheet around to catch up. We got music. Sorry. If you're on Zoom or Facebook or YouTube, you will have an opportunity to ask questions, as you'll have an opportunity to ask questions locally too. But one of the benefits of being here local and face-to-face is that we do have a raffle that we do at each of the lunch and learns. So you should have gotten a little number, and so we'll put that in a class and pull it. And we've got, this is our giveaway for today. The garden wand, you can just put it in your garden. This was pretty. And this is Wayne Steele, and she is in charge of lunch and learns for this year. And now it's my happy experience to introduce Jessica Wilkinson. She has a BS in agricultural business management and a master's in agriculture from UT. She's had loads of experience being the extension officer agent for Roane County. And she also is in charge of agricultural and nature resources and community economic development. So please welcome Jessica.
Thanks, Lucy. So, yeah, it's gonna work. Sorry.
Excuse me, are we on Zoom?
Yes, everything's gone.
Okay.
And I've got the questions monitored up here so I can see it.
So somebody texted me, but they can't get them.
It's on. There's 5 people on, so it's working. Anyway, so as I said, I'm Jessica Wilkinson Smith. I'm the ag agent here in Roane County. So I handle everything from I have a weed in my yard, how do I get rid of it, to I need help with managing something on my cattle farm, and that can be from vaccinations to castrations. We handle a lot of things around here in the ag and natural resource world. So a little bit about our office before we dive into why you're here. I always make it my goal. We don't try to be the best kept secret of all of our resources, but we do. We still manage somehow to achieve that. So you guys know what we do. So myself, I'm the agriculture agent, natural resources, community economic development, and the county director here. So I am in charge of this office, this building, the space, and the staff. Lisa McMahon is our family consumer science agent. You guys know the canning classes, your traditional home economic stuff. You're a home economic agent. It's just retitled to family consumer sciences. She teaches canning, nutrition, budgeting, financial planning. She spends a lot of time on fitness, and then chronic disease conditions education. Anna Johnson is our 4-H agent. She works with all of the youth in the county. She one woman show when it comes to 4-H in our county, just to compare. We have 100 clubs in our county, and she meets every single one of them. She meets 4th and 5th grade classes every month of the school year, does a different contest with them. She also goes to camp with them in the summer. We take 115 kids to camp every summer from Roane County. And compared to say Ray County down from us, they have 2 full-time 4-H agents and a half-time 4-H agent that meets 98 clubs. So she's a very busy lady with what she does. Megan Rhodes, if you guys call our office, she's the friendly face, friendly voice you hear. You come in, she's the friendly face you see, welcoming everybody. And then you guys are the first to actually get to see this picture. Miss Katie Turnbow, she starts tomorrow, actually. It's her first day. She's coming to us with extension experience from the Eastern region. She's going to be doing our 10-step, which is nutrition education for SNAP, food stamp eligible families. It will be her area of focus. So she'll be starting here tomorrow. You'll see her floating around if you come to our office, working on her training for the next 6 months before she can actually start teaching. That's a heavily trained program. But this is our staff. We all have somebody here to help answer questions almost in every gamut you could try to come up with an answer for, a question for. And if we don't know it, we have a bigger team behind us called the University of Tennessee to help us answer questions. We're the front porch here. We bring the research to the public. That is our job. That's the purpose of these educational sessions on Saturdays that the Master Gardeners do, is a continuing outreach to our community to bring education. The university is broken down of outreach, education, and research. We are the outreach part of that branch and of that mission for the University of Tennessee. So come to us. We all love to talk, obviously. I am not the biggest talker in our office, but that will shock you at all. But come to us, ask us questions. That's what we're here for. If I don't know, we have a team of volunteers. As I've already told you guys, my background is in agricultural economics and then agriculture education and communications. So my learning curve when it came to working within horticulture was pretty vertical when I started 8 years ago. And I've gotten pretty comfortable and adapting, and I still learn something every day. And the motto within the Master Gardeners that I'm the advisor of is, if you don't know it, teach it. It's the best way to learn it. So that's always my goal. Is a topic I'm not sure about, I will volunteer to teach about it so I can do a lot of research and learn about it. And that's what we try to encourage in the Master Gardeners. So now we're going to dive into why you're here. Now, I will say this, I'm a pretty informal speaker. I like things a lot better. If you stop me, ask questions as we go, don't save it till the end. Same with you guys that are watching on Zoom, Facebook. Well, Zoom specifically, I can see your questions here on the screen. I'll answer those as we go along also. Facebook, YouTube, I'll come back and catch those at the end. But you guys in the room, stop me. We're adults. It's okay. You can interrupt. You can let me know, hey, you have a question. We can chat and go ahead and address that right then. Talk with me. I don't like to talk at you. I like to talk with you. It's a lot more enjoyable that way. So we're going to focus on invasive plants. And our goal is to remove them and then replace them with something that's more beneficial to our environment. So a weed versus an invasive. So all invasives are weeds, but not necessarily are all weeds invasives. Invasive means that it has came and made a negative impact to the natural environment. And so that's what we're going to focus on, are these non-native plants that threaten the native habitats through the spread of either in disturbed areas, urban, suburban landscapes, agricultural lands, and even along our roadsides. A lot of these we're going to talk about are things that we could walk right outside this door and point out about 50 of them because they just spread that easily. So where do we typically see these? Areas that there are frequent disturbances, so roadsides, forest disturbances from different types of storms, fires, insect and disease infestation causes dieback, which allows more invasive things to take a hold, or harvesting or any canopy removing. So even when we come in and cut out forest, if we don't plant something back, something's always going to grow back. If you recently built a new property, you cut a lot of trees off your property. If you didn't plant something back and maintain that area by mowing it, you're going to have something come back. And most of the time, it's something we don't want. So when we go to control these things, how do we recommend doing it? So the Tennessee, do you guys know that Tennessee actually has an invasive plant council? It is a government appointed, a Tennessee governor appointed council. That's what they do. They help study and see how they're impacting the environment, and have made a list of 65 invasive plants in the state of Tennessee that are considered a threat to the Tennessee natural ecosystem. So how we can work with those. So their recommendations is to identify them, control, be very vigilant, because this is not an easy task to control these on our property. You guys know that, or you wouldn't be here. Some of you might be hoping that I have this magic silver bullet to tell you that's going to take care of them. No, I don't. We're going to talk about some different methods of how we can handle them and take care of them, but it's going to be a very vigilant process. And then replant. Replace it with something that's going to help fulfill the goal of what that plant's purpose originally was, but be something that's oftentimes more beautiful, but it's also better for our environment. So everybody know what these are? Bradford pears, the more wild hybrids called calorie pears. They were invasive from China. They're very white flowered. They smell great right now, don't they? Don't you love that fishy smell? They're very, very, very easily identifiable by that. They give us a lot of good color in spring. They are pretty, and they give those nice flowers. In the fall, their leaves are that bright red. They do have some nice attributes, but they're very weak wooded. What's the first tree to split when the wind gets rough? Always these guys. If you planted the landscape Bradford pears, especially. The wild hybrids, the calorie pears, cause some other interesting problems. They will actually, the calorie pears will actually cross-pollinate with a pear you want to actually eat off of, and produces these nice, nasty little round pears that are disgusting. You can try to eat them. I've met one person who said they like them, but they have no taste in anything. So I don't trust their food choices. These wild invasives on the side of the road that are crosses of all these calorie pears. So they're these nice big thorns. And in our agricultural world, even if we cut those down, those thorns will come out and they will plumb through a tractor tire in 2 seconds. They cause a lot of damage. So we'll talk about right now we're just gonna talk about our identifying factors. Then we're gonna go through how to get rid of them, okay? We're gonna do some basics, yes.
The Bradford pear will cross-pollinate with the regular pear?
The true straight Bradford pears are not supposed to. They have been bred to not. However, the calorie pears are a wild version of a Bradford pear, and they will cross-pollinate with your edible pears.
Do they look alike?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So those are all the white ones up there?
Yes, all these white ones that you look outside right now, those are going to be your calorie or your Bradford pears.
Yeah, so the question I saw, like I was out at Walmart and I looked over on the other side of 27 on the mountain thing, and it's full of these white trees. Is that the calorie pear?
Yes.
And I was thinking, how do you get rid of them?
We'll talk about that.
Okay.
You're setting me up real good. Hold that thought. We're going to get there.
So if they're in the landscape,
Yes.
they're probably Bradford.
If they were in a landscape, they're probably intentionally planted Bradford pears. Yes, you're right.
So half a mile from me down the street, there's a whole row of those. And if I wanted to plant a pear tree eventually, will that be close enough to cross-pollinate?
How far are we talking?
About half a mile?
Ideally, no. You should be okay. But are we talking Bradford pears, somebody intentionally planted, or are we talking wild calorie pears?
Yeah, that's a good question.
That's going to be the difference.
So I had one of those right in my front. It's the only tree out of a big one. Took out my nice tree.
Yes.
Now that's the only one that I have, and so I don't want to get rid of it for that reason.
Yes.
That's all I've got. My husband wants to get rid of it. Now mine is shaped exactly like that.
So this is one that's actually
Bradford are.
This is one that has been pruned at a point in time. It may have been when it was young, but it's been pruned to be given a central leader and to bush out. Typically, a Bradford pear, what we see on the side of the road, they're tall, they're straight. That's it. This has been a pruned and maintained one. You can keep them in your landscape if you want to prune and maintain them. And I'm not talking about coming in and hacking them and topping them every year. That's equivalent to crepe murder with crepe myrtles. It's murder to these trees long term. It's managing them if you're gonna keep them in your landscape.
Oh, I would
Yeah.
not.
If you're gonna do it, it's just, if you're gonna keep it, there are ways to prune it and manage it to keep it that shape. It's gonna reduce some of the issues that come along with it being weak wooded and breaking apart. Because the big problem is with the Bradford pears and the Callery pears, what makes them break so easily is they grow straight up. And that creates a lot of, when that weight gets on there, it just pulls and breaks away. When we, this one, as you can see, it's more like a bowl shape. It's went in, it's been pruned of everything that was growing straight up, that cut off. So it's going out already and it's growing with that tension and building strength. If it's straight up and has something full on it, it's just gonna crack and fall. That's also why we said we don't want to ever just completely cut the top off, because that's all you're doing is forcing it to grow straight right back up. You're going to go in and cut everything. When you're pruning anything, free information, when you're pruning any of these out, any of your even apple trees, anything like that, you're going to go in and cut all these little ones that are going straight up out of it. Anything that's going to cross over, rub together, because you're wanting to remove the potentials of those breaks and those stress points.
This is the time to prune or what?
You're a little late at this point. Everything broke buds really early this year. Our weather, our temperatures, I'm afraid, is going to cause some issues with harvest later on this year. But I would not suggest pruning right now. I saw a few do it this last weekend that already had flowers on it. Once it's flowering, you don't want to do it. Bud breaking, it's starting to put off those little green buds, you can. Still not ideal. Generally, that last week of January, first week of February is your safest time to do it. Mid-February, our weather starts getting fun enough sometimes that it just removes that ideal time. Typically, we should be able to say you can do this till about March 15th, if things are on average, and we do nothing on average around here anymore. The world doesn't do anything on average anymore. So the Empress tree, Princess tree, Paulina tree. These were another one that was brought in from China. They grow very rapidly. They are very weedy trees. They may spread extremely easily. And they're also weak wooded if they're not maintained. How many of you guys have these up along the tree lines everywhere? Trees of heaven. They're from Europe. They grow very, very quickly. So that was originally the draw to them when we brought them here. And when they were trying to use them, as they grew quickly to provide shade, grew quickly to provide some stabilization was their hope. But they did not realize how quickly they would spread. And it became the most prevalent invasive in Tennessee. This is the one, this is enemy number one we fight with when it comes to a natural resource standpoint of our invasive plants, because it produces via seed that comes off the seed pods. It produces from sprouting at its roots. You cut it off, it produces from that cut. So yes,
I'm sorry, is it also mimosa?
no,
Not the same.
not the same.
Looks more like a sumac.
It looks a lot more like a sumac. If you can see the pattern of the leaves are different with the mimosa, it's the alternating leaves, but it fans out on each one. Each one of those alternating points is another stem that comes off with smaller leaves. So they're also called silk trees. They produce like a legume or a seed pod for us to drop those seeds. They have a very fern-like standard point. They prefer open areas, lots of sun. Seeds remain in for many years. These are very resilient. Yes, ma'am.
So what's invasive here? Is that the same throughout the United States? Or
Not necessarily. It can be different. Here, these are spreading so quickly, they're killing our natives, is why they became an invasive. So we're looking at, it's very specific to our area, because there's some of these that are invasive here to East Tennessee that aren't necessarily invasive in West Tennessee. Invasive is very specific to where you are.
Because I've seen some of these at nurseries.
Yes. Mhm. Yes. It's not invasive everywhere. Invasive is a very local term to you. And which ones are identified as local is very specific to your region.
Will you be talking about why nurseries, there's not more regulations about what they sell?
That gets into EPA and government regulations and things, and I don't get into that.
Yeah, I was gonna ask,
I stick to the education side, not regulations.
if the council has deemed it
Mhm.
invasive, is there any rules to the nurseries not to sell them?
No. No.
Just-
The council has identified them and put out public information that these need to be avoided, but there is no regulation past that because invasives are very local. Each state would have to take their own action, and often sometimes, like we said, mimosas, well, we'll go to the next one. Privet here is extremely invasive. Areas further south of us and even out in West Tennessee, it's used as barriers. So it's not always an invasive in even our state. Now, it still is classified as invasive, but there's a lot of areas that use this as barriers. And when I say barriers, on the side of agricultural plantings, things like that. These reproduce from even a slight leaf left can produce a plant. They're extremely invasive. This is also some, you watch Georgia football, Lenny. This is what they line their field with. They like it down there, but see, it's relative to your environment of what you're working with. But it's very aggressive here. And there's not really any chemical. There's lots of chemicals that claim they will kill this. And we will talk about that here in a minute of control. There's chemicals that are labeled to handle most any of these, but it's how you use them that's going to make them effective. It's not going to work if you just go out there and spray the bush. You're just going to make it last at that point. Yes.
I have in my yard, I have what's called a California privet.
Mhm.
Is that the same thing?
No, these are Chinese and common privets.
Okay,
There are some that are more landscape privets. When we look at the alternatives for these, you'll see. I am going to go to what we plant to replace these. That's where we're getting. That's the eventual goal to where we're getting. Yes.
So if you can't spray it, you can't seem to chop it out. How do you get rid of it?
We're getting there. You're setting me up. You were getting there, I promise. So bush honeysuckle. It's Asian descended. It was originally planted for wildlife food. Again, it spread like wildlife does. It spreads thanks to our wildlife taking those seeds and moving them around. The seeds don't break down or those little berries don't break down if they eat them. So when they poop other places, they drop a new plant there. It moves with them. Japanese honeysuckle. There are some good non-invasive honeysuckles we'll talk about. The Japanese honeysuckle was actually brought to introduce erosion control. Same as the next one we're going to talk about, tedsu. That's the next one we're going to talk about, tedsu. Both of these were brought in for erosion control, but you want to know the irony of the situation? They absolutely do nothing for erosion control. They just cover up the problem because they don't grow off of many different vines and many different plants. You have one plant that is here in the center of a hill that produces thousands and thousands of vines. So it just covers up everything. The idea for erosion control and stabilization is you need lots of roots and lots of plants going in. And that's not how these operate. It just covers up the problem. Chinese Lespedeza. There are some very good Lespedezas that we use. Not really in our landscaping. We use Lespedeza a little more in our forage production for our livestock. There's a lot of research out there that shows Lespedeza is a good parasite control for your sheep and goats, but that's not this type of Lespedeza. It was, again, another one that was brought in for erosion control. It didn't work real well for that either. It's spread by seed movement. It's sprouted from the root collar. It just continues to spread. It doesn't really hold anything. It's very shallow rooted. Erosion control, we need deep roots. So it was, again, another backfire to that. Japanese grass. First place we found this was outside of Knoxville, Tennessee. It grows about 3 feet tall. We see it a lot in the undergrowth of our forested areas. It's an annual flower. We'll see mid to late summer. It reproduces through nodes and seeds. So that's the reason it's hard to get rid of. You leave a small little node in the soil, it's going to come back. So yes, we're realizing if you haven't discovered that get rid of this part is going to be the challenging part of our conversation.
isn't the same as that macro. It lives in shady.
Mhm.
It's very fine filament kind of.
Still grants that one?
No,
No?
look it up. Asian, but if you use it appropriately, Google is your friend, whoever said that. It can also be your biggest enemy.
Well, it can help you identify.
Yes. This Asian bittersweet, it loves full sun. We'll see this creep in a little bit more in our landscaped areas. It spreads through seeds. Cutting and pulling alone is not going to work. So we have to figure out ways to address these using herbicides in our landscapes, which there are things we can use in our landscapes that are safe and then aren't going to hurt the rest of the things we want to keep there. And we're going to talk about those chemicals here in a minute. English ivy. So pretty, right? No. High climbing evergreen, it's aggressive and weedy. It'll take over anything. It'll take over a wall. It'll take over a tree. It doesn't care. What? It gets very buggy. Yes. Yes, it gets very thick and it's very cool in there and they like it. It's nearly impossible to eradicate if it's allowed to establish. It's a very long process. The best time to do it is in the fall and in the winter when it's dead. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. Ground ivy, also called creeping Charlie. It produces it's in the mint family, so if you pick it up and smell it, it has a very distinct smell. Evergreen, it's a ground creeper. It's thick, low growing mat. It prefers partial sun. We'll see this a lot come up in our lawns or our yards. How many people in here have a lawn? Who has a yard? Okay, we're about half and half. Okay. Lawn implies you want to get rid of it, as many weeds as possible there. Yards people are typically okay that regardless of as long as you mow it at the right height, it all looks like grass. So,
It's all green.
it's all green. So it's just two different thought processes here, just trying to see where we're sticking at it. So we'll see this a lot in our yards creep in. And again, when it's mowed appropriately, it looks like regular grass to a certain point. But it spreads very, very well, and it has a very distinct odor when you run over it with your mower. It's kind of a musty mint, is the best way I know to describe it. So these are some other ones that we see here in Tennessee. Johnson grass is considered an invasive in the state of Tennessee. It grows really well anywhere and it's extremely hard to get rid of. Different types of thistles. Trying to see which one. Crown vetch is another one. Non-native wisterias. There are some native wisterias, but non-native wisterias can cause issues here as well. Ma'am? Sorry. All right, so control. Now we've talked about them. How do we get rid of them? So there's several different ways you can do this. Goats. Livestock can work really well on some of these. Goats especially because they're browsers. Some people never want to touch a goat, and that's perfectly fine. Some people live in areas that's not going to work for them, so we have to look at other methods. Mechanical approaches, digging them, pulling them out. It's a lot harder on your back, but it's pretty effective, but it's not always effective. With these, I know a lot of us like to stick away from using chemicals at all. Unfortunately, with these, any of our invasives, it's going to be something that we have to have the conversation about using. And all of these are safe when we use them appropriately. When we follow the label, wear the protective gear we're supposed to, and do not go on our own trying to use a chemical in a way it's not meant to be used. A lot of our chemicals get a lot of bad rap for things that, and issues they can cause. Most of the time, 99.9% of the time when those issues have arise, it's because the person did not use them in accordance to the label. Now, when you call and ask me a chemical question, I'm always going to ask you what product you're looking at specifically, because I'm going to pull up the label and look at it, because the label is the law. The law, our laws are written that the label on a pesticide, herbicide product is the legal law to use that. If you use it outside of accordance of that label, you are actually breaking the law. So it's just like with with prescription medication. If you are taking it outside of what it's prescribed for, you're breaking the law. So it's the same thing with these. So you're making sure we're using them in accordance to how they're supposed to be used and when they're supposed to be used. You're going to see us talk about glyphosate a lot when we do this. I'm going to go through this in tricloper. Those are the two most common ones we use in woody type material. Again, both of these are safe. We use them and use them appropriately. And they're also, both of these are very temperature specific. The temperature has to be 65 degrees or higher when using these products. If it is below it, all you've done is just buried some expensive water. I'm going to do absolutely nothing. And it's better if it can stay 65 degrees or higher for 3 days in a row before you use it and then after you're using it. So right now, everything's starting to peak out and grow, and we have this thing we need to go ahead and spray. No. Most all of our chemicals that are going to take care of any type of our weeds require that 65 degrees before and after it's sprayed. With that, there are things we can do, and we'll talk about some of these as a pre-emergent approach that we're going to, thank you. A pre-emergent approach that we are going to take in trying to prevent some of these from coming back. What those typically do is prevent the root of prevent the seed from germinating. That's the goal of the pre-emergent. Glyphosate does not have that ability naturally. Now you can go buy name brand Roundup 365. If you buy that and spray it, it is a mixed chemical that is mixed with a chemical that has a 365-day residual in the soil. Nothing you put in that spot will germinate. So be very specific when you're going to look at these labels and you're looking for it. You are getting the exact active ingredient that you need. Okay. There's no need for those extra things in any of these scenarios that we're going to talk about. Some type of that type of residual we're going to use, say, right around walkways or right around the edges of our house, concrete areas that we're trying to keep weeds out of a specific barrier. Yes.
Critical breakdown.
Yeah, it does. After that, the residual usually it's marketed for 365 days. Average is about 300 days, actually.
So does the breakdown get into the soil? I mean, this stuff doesn't just go away, does it?
So the breakdown, what it does is it reduces the inactivity of it. A lot of it is, some of it is continue to absorb in the soil and broke down to a point it's no longer effective to be a preventative. Some of it actually evaporates throughout the process of breakdown. It depends on the type of chemical.
I was just talking like if you're doing a permaculture, you're going to use that for stuff for food, trees, whatever. I've understood that glyphosate is bad, like all around bad. It gets into the waterways, it kills fishes, it kills things.
If it is used excessively, it will do those things. If you're using it in accordance to the labels, how it's prescribed to be used, it actually has residual effects that the research shows you can drink it. If it is mixed appropriately, and it will not affect you.
With the vodka or something.
With water is how the research is done. I'm not advocating to try it, but every single weed science specialist at the University of Tennessee will tell you that if they were put in a room and were told they had to drink one chemical to be able to leave, and they would be killed, they would pick up glyphosate and drink it and walk out. Now, I'm not telling you to do that by any standard, don't do it. But if any of these, glyphosate specifically, it gets a bad rep because it will kill anything that's green. That's one we have to do is very targeted, very specific. We don't just broadcast spray it because it can increase resistance over time, and we don't want to get anything that's Roundup resistant. Because if we do at that point, it's going to be a big problem. That's our nuclear choice we don't like to go to anyway. But on all of these, you will see a type of glyphosate recommendation. With Bradford pears, tricloper is another one that acts in similar accordance as glyphosate, but it is not, it's not as fast acting. It's a slower approach. With Bradford pear or calorie pears, all of them, ideally, we're going to find them when they're smaller. We grab them, we pull them out, and you can treat that small area right there where it was to try to kill any roots that are left with just a simple broadcast spray. Right there, very targeted. You can mix it up a lot of what homeowners do. They will mix it appropriately, buy the concentrates, put it in a spray bottle, and literally spray it. Literally like a trigger empty bottle you can get. Label all of these really well. The last thing you want to do is use glyphosate in it, take it inside and mix up Lysol to try to clean your house with. Accidents happen, but we label things really well to know what we're mixing these in. With girdling, you can also do, it's not extremely effective on these types of trees, obviously, because everywhere you leave exposed bark, they're going to potentially throw out another seedling. So what we're going to do with these bigger ones, we're going to cut it off as low to the ground as we can, and almost immediately you are going to spray it with tricloper or glyphosate mixed up to the specifics of what chemical you buy. Because all of these are at different ratios. You can buy ready to use, you can buy concentrate, you have to mix up on your own. It is your choice and what you choose to work with. That becomes the every favorite answer. It depends how much money you want to spend and what you have to work with. Which one you want, your comfort level also. And you're gonna, we say paint or cover, spray that open cut. And what it does then is it's absorbed straight down into the roots. It kills the root system. So you should not have any more come out from that area. The Royal Paulina, you can use Arsenal with it. You can also use Garlon 4. It's a different type of chemical. It has the active ingredient tricloper, I believe. It's an oil base that soaks into the bark to be used of saplings. Mechanically, all these are going to look about the same. You're going to cut it out and pull it out. Most of the time in those instances, still when you cut it at the base of the tree, treat it with that tricloper, Garline, or glyphosate to kill the roots. Girdling, again, it's a method you can use. It's very slow. And what that involves doing is you're going to cut about 6, a wide gap, generally if you can, about 6 inches. Smaller will work all the way around the tree. And what that does is it breaks up how its nutrients get to the top, from the roots to the top of the tree. It's going to slowly die. You're going to still have to cut it and remove it unless it's in an area that you can cut it and let it lie. But the problem with letting it lie, what happens there? You're going to have more tree and more seeds. So you're going to need to haul it out. Hand pulling only works if you catch them when they're young and you can get the entire root out.
You have to dig those.
You have to dig those. Very rarely you're going to be able to just straight pull it. Tree of Heaven. This one we can use Garlon or Pathway or Pathfinder or different types of chemicals that you can use. Those handouts, the one that is the University of Tennessee has some of the recommended chemicals in there also, but it also gives a link to the ornamental herbicide manual that gives all of the example. If you go to that one, it lists all of the recommended herbicides that you can use for your specific problems. You can also, I don't know if I put the link on here. We'll look in a minute before I get there. Mimosas. Again, we're going to go in the same process with all of these. This one again works best with glyphosate or tricloper. Garlon is not as effective with this one. Mimosas in that reason is because it's extremely, extremely, extremely invasive, and they will go be able to come back on about anything left from the tree. Fragments resprout extremely easily from a mimosa. I had these taglines backwards. That was the manual control. This is the chemical. Sorry, I have those tags backwards. But Arsenal works well here. Again, Garline is it's on the label to use it, but it's not as effective as if we look at Arsenal or a glyphosate-based product. Privet. This is one of them. If you go out there and just broadcast foliar spray Privet, it's just going to laugh at you. You hadn't even made it mad. It just finds it funny. It's going to wilt, die back, and it's going to come right back. I've had the phone call of what works for this. I've even put diesel on it. Please don't put diesel on your plants trying to kill it. It works, and it causes some extremely bad environmental problems. So please don't do that. Just because we have this conversation around here a lot. Just because you can does not mean you should in any instance, and that is one of them. Not only is it illegal, but it causes a lot of environmental issues. Privet is one of these that you have to go in, again, cut it back, just like we do these trees, treat very specific and make sure you remove every bit of that you cut and burn it is the most effective way to get rid of it. Burn it, have a bonfire.
Yes.
Yes. Have you a big bonfire, invite your neighbors over, get some s'mores material, have some fun.
What you got to paint? Oh, okay.
You have to paint.
You cut that thing.
Yep, it's gonna come right back. Yes, all of these, you have to spray that right back. And then eventually the hope is to be able to get the root out of there also, but, because you can still have residual glyphosate, triclosan, or any of these are not foolproof, or not your silver bullet that's gonna take care of it. You're still gonna have to keep coming back and retreating that spot several times to get it under control. Yes, ma'am.
I've heard that you need to paint it or spray it within 30 seconds. So you have to carry
Yes. It's not
the
a
right position you are.
So these trees and any of our woody plants, they're a lot like us. When we're cut, our body starts trying to heal that cut and stop it from bleeding instantly. That's exactly what these trees do, is they try to seal themselves over extremely quickly. So they're going to produce a natural barrier that prevents anything from being uptaken. So no, you can't go through there and cut all of these in one big swoop and then go what you cut 3 hours ago and start spraying or painting those areas. You're going to have to do it almost immediately, not necessarily within 30 seconds, but within 5 minutes is what we recommend. The honeysuckle. The bush honeysuckle, again, is one that you're going to have to come in. You can do glyphosate with a surfactant, which is a carrier that helps it stick better to the plants. The label will recommend specifically what, in your instance, what's going to work better, what type of surfactant to use. You can use that when there's seedlings and saplings and spray it directly and it will take care of it. As it gets bigger, you're going to have to cut the stems and paint the trunks. All of these have the same, very similar mode of action. Until you, here you can pull it out. You can rub it, try to get as much of that out as possible, pull those large stems out, and make sure you don't also feel like I shouldn't have to say this, but probably I'm going to say it. I mentioned burn all of these. Don't compost any of these. Don't cut these. And if you're making a raised bed, go fill up your raised beds with all of this wood for it to break down. All you're doing is continuing to breed in the problem. Burn them and get rid of them. Or we don't even really recommend chipping things up to use in mulch and things. You can, but you're going to have to treat that mulch before you use it. So just again, some other tidbits within control of these.
I'm a little concerned about burning.
Yeah.
And then the pollution that you pass right back.
Yeah.
Would it be better to haul it off to the dump, or?
You can, but all you're doing is hauling those weeds straight to the dump for them to have to deal with there.
Exactly.
So you're just passing the buck along.
Exactly.
And what they'll do is chip, if you take wood products down there, they'll chip it and you can get it back, but they don't treat it before you get it back. Yeah. Not really.
So Jessica, when you get the
Mhm.
untreated mulch
Mhm.
from the dump, what would you treat it?
You can, I would go in and use a pre-emergent for whatever we're trying to adjust with. Put that on here somewhere. Where's my pre-emergent stuff? So like with this, you're gonna use something that has sulfur trinzone in it. Most any of these you can get as a turf pre-emergent. You're gonna need to do this with. It's also gonna have to be currently appropriately timed. There is some research even showing you can mix in cream with some of these and it will help prevent germination. It's a lot of mixed reviews of what you can use to treat those with. But you're gonna wanna go with a pre-emergent in that instance because you're trying to prevent the problem. And then also you have to remember if you do go nuclear and try to use something like glyphosate when you treat that, all you did is when you put it and spread it next to your plants, you're gonna kill whatever you just put it next to. So that's what you're gonna say, we're gonna wanna go with something that is a pre-emergent that is very targeting of just preventing those seeds from germinating and for those specific types of weeds we're looking at. So with English ivy, you're gonna cut immediately and treat that stem. You're gonna have to find where that stem is coming from and try to treat as close to the root zone as possible. The best time of year to handle this is when it's dormant in the fall. Go cut it. You're not gonna pull it completely down off of the tree that it's coming on or even the wall that it's been climbing up of probably, but you can get most of it and pull the root up from it. And then watch as it goes to try to come back. You can catch it when it's much smaller, cut it, and then treat that small vine stump better than trying to figure out how to handle it while it's already covering the wall. Yes.
We had a lot of ivy
Mhm.
in the home that we moved to. It was invading the trees, killing the trees. And so we cut it out, this section out, treated the bottom and also treated
Mhm.
the upper part of the
Yes.
cut and it actually killed.
It'll take care of most of it. It's easier to do that when it's on when it's dormant, to cut it and use it and get rid of it. You can catch it as it's coming back up, but that's a perfectly good way to do it too.
I have a lot of honeysuckle that's going up in my trees.
Yes.
Would that be a good way to handle that also?
Yes, ma'am. So these ground ivies, creeping Charlie, most any of those small plant weeds that are growing in our ornamental gardens that they're creeping in. Yes.
Yeah, but it was the microstegia, which is invasive bamboo. Looks like a little.
Yes.
It's in the shade. It's a ground. It's a ground.
Yes.
Still, I think it's invasive.
I think it is on the invasive list. It should be on that list on the Tennessee natives invasive options. Yes.
So if it's invasive, but it's on TVA property, can you take it out?
Yeah.
I catch you.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I have to tell you that no. You can contact their environmental group and you can get permissions to do those. So you can call TVA's environmental department, and most of the time they're willing to work with you as long as you follow using things appropriately. What they're trying to keep you from doing is taking and pouring straight Roundup right at the edge of the water to run straight down into the water. They're trying to prevent overuse of chemicals getting into the water, and keeping the bank stabilized as much as possible. What they're trying to do. So I'm going to guess your property's right on the lake. And that does throw some hitches in the get up a little bit there of how we can handle those. But in our turf areas, we can use dismiss as a pre-emergent herbicide. In our ornamentals, there aren't any that's labeled to handle them as a pre-emergent that's not going to affect how the plants you're planting you want to keep they're going to reproduce. You can come in, however, after they're already up and use Certainty is the name of is the trade name. It has sulfuron in it. And it will not affect your ornamental plants that are around it. It strictly only targets those types of plants to use. You can pull those out and spray that area down to help prevent them from coming back. But if you're going to use certainty, I will say this. It does require contact either with the stem or with the leaf. So if you go pull everything out and just spray the ground, you just sprayed expensive water on the ground. Because at that point, you're looking for a pre-emergent. That's not how it operates. It has to come in contact at least to the stem or the leaf. So vigilance. That's exactly what all this is going to take. They're easily spread by wildlife and wind. They're easily spread by us. If we go and work in one area of our yard that has these seeds already, it sticks to the bottom of our shoes. We go help our neighbor that has a problem with something, it sticks to us, we move it to our yard. We can easily move it around just as easily as wildlife can. Most of these seeds, like we talked about earlier, if a wildlife animal eats them, they don't break down. When they defecate somewhere, they're leaving you a little surprise in your yard to eventually germinate. And these seeds also live in the soil for an extremely long period of time. So we want to be able to, only way we're ever going to get ahead of these is be vigilant and monitor it. As soon as we see one coming up, take it out. Section of your yard, one we didn't talk about, it's not on the invasive list, but it's extremely weedy. And it's working its way to being on the invasive list is wild blackberries. Yes.
Was it the thorns on the?
Yes.
Oh, no.
They have not officially made the invasive list, which surprises me, but it's on the cusp of right getting there. Mow them down. Like, don't just leave them. If it's an area you can mow it, mow it.
The roots are like, I was in the yard yesterday and I decided to put a bunch of black-eyed Susans in this one area.
Yeah.
So I started pulling out with my rose gloves. Those thorns are so teeny weeny. They were stuck, I turned around, they were stuck in my back. I was stuck on my butt. They were everywhere. So we cleared a spot, but I mean, we tried getting them, but every time I stuck a shovel in the ground, I got another. They're bad.
They're extremely bad down the.
Our whole neighborhood is full of them.
They're bad. I'm just across the ridge from you. They're terrible in our house too.
Is it wildlife that's spreading on them?
That wind.
And the deer eat them, just like I have every variety of honeysuckle you think of in my woods, but the deer, they
eat it.
They eat it. They're always on my wood line eating.
Yes.
You know, but then they're wild. They're off. They're off.
That is the reason I came here. I have a vacant job that will not be vacant. Hopefully. But I have what I think are Himalayan blackberries. Blackberries. It's got like the very almost like a box type cane on it. And my understanding is that those are extremely invasive.
They're extremely weedy. They have not made the invasive list yet. That's why I didn't talk about it. They're really close. It's one that should be on the list, in my opinion. Is it a way you can mow that area?
No, I can't. We can't get anything. Can't get a mower into the.
If there's a way you can.
Cover.
Okay, if there's a way you can cut them down, and you're gonna have to treat them with a glyphosate product.
So
now,
even if the roots won't,
because you're not gonna get all of them. Now, I will say, once you put chickens in there, they will not become a problem anymore. They will scratch that area up. They'll continually eat the seeds.
So
they'll plastic.
But that's what I'm worried about.
Are you gonna let them free range out of there?
I did before.
I will say right now, if anybody has poultry, avian influenza is a really big potential harm right now.
So just keep them in.
You need to keep them in an area that wild animals or wild birds specifically can't get in there with them. So even if you're going to do a run, you can give them a bigger run. For mine, for example, we have a 15 by 50 run that's covered in aviary netting. So we can let them out and let them get grass, but they cannot have a wild bird get in there right now.
Yeah, I've got a big
As long as you can find a way to prevent wild birds from getting in there with them, you're gonna reduce your potential issue with avian influenza. That's gonna be your biggest thing there. The thing is, as long as they're not getting out and roaming, they're just gonna keep defecating that seed and another one's gonna eat it. It's gonna be contained to that area. And their digestive system acts differently than, say, a deer. A deer is a ruminant. Of how it breaks things down. They don't fully break seeds down. A chicken, however, everything is grinded as it goes through. So it's going to be smaller. They have parts like their gizzard and their crop has almost like little rocks in it, and it grinds and breaks things down. It's finer. So that's why we can use chicken manure a lot easier in our composting, and we don't have to treat it, or it doesn't have to heat as long as, say, horse or cattle or goat food.
That's good.
Manure. I'm so sorry. Use the pretty word, manure.
I'm sorry, I'm like, I'm going in.
Yeah. So now the things we can plant in its place, what we can do to use these differently. So instead of our Bradford pears, to still get some of the color, we can use a hawthorn or even a redbud. Yes, you can get a white variety of redbuds too. That sounds counterintuitive, but there are white redbuds. That why would you call them a white bud is what I want to know, or something like that. But they are white redbuds. The empress trees, you can use buckeye trees or sweet bay magnolias. These all get within about the same height of the original and give you some of the same similar color. Tree of heaven, black walnuts, which also bring in some other things people don't like, but it is an option. A traditional sumac tree is also a good alternative. Yes.
I find it difficult. Sometimes I confuse the walnut with the tree of heaven.
Mhm.
It looks similar.
They do look similar.
How do you clearly see the difference?
Like tree of heaven generally should not ever get this big. They're much smaller trees. Their leaves are also different in how they grow and how they are. Tree of heaven's trees are a lot longer than what black walnut is.
Somebody told me that one of them has a little notch on
Yeah,
the
I
leaf
think
too.
that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sumac does.
Which one?
Mimosas, we have lots of options of them. Fringe trees, flowering dogwoods, locust trees, even our redbuds. These are going to give you those same colors that you would be looking for within those in your landscape. These are much better for our environment. And they're also still going to, if you're doing these for wildlife areas, within wooded areas, they're still going to draw wildlife the same.
And all of these replacements are already native plants.
Yes. All of these are natives that we're talking about. Yes.
The locust trees, do they not have thorns?
So, okay, so wild locust does. These, this is an ornamental native that doesn't.
Okay.
Does walnuts hurt certain vegetables in your garden?
They produce acidity is the problem. And when they break down in the area, they can cause problems with gardening long term. So you'd want to plant them in an area that's away from gardens generally. Generally also, it shed those nuts a lot easier. They're also falling hazards and things. We're going to put them in places that we're not going to walk in a lot is generally the recommendation. Instead of privet, you can use wax myrtles, Arwoods, mountain laurels. It's going to be a lot prettier. It's going to provide still that same level of barrier that privet's original goal is. It's also going to serve a wildlife draw purpose. The bush honeysuckle, you can use some different varieties of witch hazel within those. Japanese honeysuckle, we can use traditional yellow honeysuckle or yellow jessamine or trumpet honeysuckle. These are going to give you the different color varieties than from the Japanese honeysuckle. They don't spread nearly as quickly or as invasive, and they're not invasive to our environment. Kudzu, we want nothing to deal with anything that looks like kudzu. Our goal, goats, this is the one I recommend if you have goat. If you have an area that's terrible for it, goats love it. Sheep will even like it pretty well. Goats are browsers. They will pull this up by the roots and take it out. Horses actually will clear it pretty well too. They're just not as effective of browsers and grazers as our sheep and goats do. If you don't want to own sheep and goats, there are actually companies you can rent goats from that they will bring out the fencing, do everything, monitor the goats, whole 9 yards, and you will get the ability of your land being cleared, the perk of it without having to deal with the goats yourself. They come take them out of there when they're done. You can rent them. Yes.
Do you have the name of that?
There's one, 2 brothers out of Clinton that does them. I can look it up and get it to you though.
Okay.
All of us.
I will make sure it gets sent out off the list today. Goats are wonderful things. I have 3. They're the greatest lawnmowers that we have. They're a lot more efficient with it. With Chinese Lespedeza, we can use Blue Star. Wild Indigo is an option to replace these. They're a lot prettier and than the traditional Lespedeza. It gives the same benefits. It's actually better at erosion control than Chinese Lespedeza is. Instead of these Japanese grasses, we're going to look at actually some different types of native switch grasses. They provide really good stabilization. These switch grasses do. They also don't get much taller. They get, most of the time they'll get about hip high. They're going to stay there and they'll die back each year. Asian bittersweet, we're going to look at American bittersweet or Carolina snail seed as options to use. English ivy, we can use phlox as an alternative to it. We can also use a climbing hydrangea as an option for it. Some Solomon seal, alum root, or even whitewood aster are good options. So the main point of all of this is realizing that with invasives, there's no silver bullet that we're going to be able to take care of these. It's a constant battle with what we're dealing with. And that we are ways we can control them, but we have to do it in a way that is environmentally friendly and in ways that are effective. And we have to be very vigilant with it. And we also want to turn around and replant, because if we just pull these areas out and leave that area disturbed, you just created the perfect place for it to come back to. So replanting was something that is going to be beneficial to what we want and beneficial to our environment. So the 2 resources that most of the information, or pretty much all of our information, was pulled from are the 2 handouts that you all have. There are a lot of other ones out there. If you go to the Tennessee Environmental Plant Council, you can search through the list, see where something falls that might be on the edge of becoming an invasive plant in our area. They have a lot of good resources to pull from. So with that, are any other questions we haven't talked about? Yeah.
Jessica, would you share with the group how we don't have to copy everything down, we can look at it later?
Yes, so it is, these are recorded, they're on Facebook and YouTube. You can go back and watch this. I also have your emails. I will send out all of the handouts that are here, and also a couple other links to things that are helpful. They're just too big of files to print off. There's one that the Environmental Council puts out. It's a really good resource about their mission involves what they do, but also really good detail of all of their invasive weeds and plants in the state of Tennessee, but it's about 60 pages. So I could not print that out for everybody, but I'll send you the link to it too. And you can expect that probably Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, I'll be honest. Yes.
I'm sure it's not invasive on cedar trees. So propagate. You don't want to.
Yeah, cedar trees, they're not considered invasive. They're considered a native, but they are very prolific and spread. They also, if you're trying to do fruit trees, they cause some potential issues. You have to treat for fungal spores. You can treat them just like any of these we talked about. They're labeled that you can treat those. Cut the stump, paint the stump, but they're technically considered a native. Yes.
So did you say cedar trees cause a problem with fruit trees?
They produce spores to produce cedar apple rust. which affects apple trees predominantly. It actually can affect pears and other stone fruits. So even so if you have a cedar tree within 5 miles of your apple trees, you're gonna potentially have this problem. There are things you can do to treat it. It's easy. If you'll circle or put a star next to your name, just put fruit trees. I'll send everybody out. We have the timetable that goes over what to do each month with fruit trees, and then how to treat, what to treat, and when to treat. And then the other publication, the sister publication to it, goes over the what to use with it. We can grow fruit trees really well here. The problem is we grow their problems really well too. And that's for a variety of different reasons. This area used to be the peach tree capital of the world. Do anybody know why we can't grow peaches as effectively anymore? Any guesses? Fungus problems. Why do we have those fungus problems? Right. Humidity, but also back during early parts of the Great Depressions when those fruit cells started dying down. And so those fruits literally just fell and rotted on the ground. It created a lot of pathogens. Those pathogens continue to live in the soil, and we see those ramifications. And now our environment's perfect for them to continue to rebreathe. So we often think history has an impact on socially, but it does environmentally too. Of all of those fruits sitting there rotting, left those pathogens in the soil that we still have to fight and combat with today. So, little history for you too. Yes, ma'am.
Like wild garlic, onion type stuff, how do you get rid of that?
Move. Really, you can spot treat it. Mowing is going to be the most effective way to get it before it bolts and produces a seed. Mow it low. I have a neighbor that mows the last week in February every year. And why? To prevent those wild onions from spreading anymore. He will come through, lower it to where he raises mower to where he's just going to catch the top of those and cut those off.
Can you forage them?
You can.
I had, who in my neighborhood asked me if we can eat them, and I said, go ahead and tell me how to.
You can eat the tops off of them. It's not really, all it is we've taken those and we bred them up to get the ones we grow in.
They look like green onions.
They do. That's all they are. They're just a different variety of green onion. We've taken them over time and bred them up to get the ones we grow in our garden.
I'm still trying to let me know how they are.
They don't have as strong a taste as an onion you would buy or even an onion you would grow. They have a lot more of an earthy taste. They taste like dirt, but you can. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jeff. It's my base. In a good way.
I like it.